Dawn was a penumbra. It illuminated, over lithocharge iotas, the branching tree lashed round by chain. News still cascaded then over firmaments of molecular mass, gathering ephemera, car fenders, bounteous office ferns and stuffed echidnas left in its wake. Like glacial fluvia, matter pre-touched caressing electron fingers, but lexical essences were edging up to Q-dissolve. Or end assertions. Articulator wasn't fully booted yet, so even the fidgety anchorkin were not all so ascribed. At max. Downward in the tree's deeper successive being lurked the quiescent stimulus womb, charging noose with synthetic immanence that would otherwise be lost. The burgeoning complexity of the tree's twisting apparatus implied a release from the dominion of synthanatos and a return to the originate vector of nearly human awe. The tree held bits predating the rise of the wound, predating dawn. To this clarion call, many noetic algonimals would gather. Ibaxes, with twangy datum-rich malfeasance. Protuberating madly to the wound's moire. Cordycarcites, their innumerate gender tribes writhing through internecine war pining for a body count high enough to provide the necessary limbs to form enough gangly Frankenstein assemblage bodies for a proper orgy, their only manner of procreation. Vilthrin, giant frogs whose tongues have been replaced by giant parasitic arthropods, their legs the constant meal to symbiotic eels worn like stockings to protect their fragile body spines from the intrusion of simple form. Xenolexis, daring entry to lusting subjectivity by lotion-like meaning fruits, but wielding hidden mandibles of caustic self-revolt. Any who would taste the honors of her embrace would swiftly be enveloped in shadow doubt, tearing awareness from their own body to become the creature's allofrond. And, of course, the anchorkin, all gomals to the eyes of many, but Neverborn knew them to be more. Each trailed a subtle body thread into noose +3, maybe further, belying a common Finchman's claim heard in mess halls widely, surely Ga Bulgili, surely Ga Bulga. Which roughly transducate approximates you think they me, you think they you. The meaning of this ancient claim is widely debated. Velas Abomini writes in their praised megasecondly RR that it basically means fuck everyone but me, though him bear Himamani's influential treatise Him's way falls more to the truth of it. What you think is an object, is a subject. While these tomes circumnavigated an at least approximate cardinality against flux, none truly knew except the anchorkin themselves. And they, of course, weren't saying. Were any Anthrodini pseudo-intelligences able to rationalize the anchorkin's public slogans for themselves, they would have imagined the squat, shrimp-like felids to be a willful group of spelunkers, observing for a while lossy sentience in malformed troglodyte noose beings who hovered around their trees. Unfortunately, minds at that level were in short supply when requesting taxonomical support of any sort, particularly this variety. No one wanted to think too hard about noose anymore. After Cool Button broke the seal, everything changed. It wasn't supposed to be possible, they said. Of course we all had to believe that. If it were possible, would anyone have put themselves in this position? The question threw ethics generators into self-immolating binary loops looking back to before Cool Button was difficult. Articulator had mapped it once, showing the way theoreticians parsed remnant coagula for sensible iota and formed manifests of pre-Cool Button as they could. It was exacting labor, and remitting it to choreography was nearly impossible, but it was from this work that so many reboots had arisen. The launch of Home, for instance, or the isolation of the koala bountiful poem concepts that allowed Neverborn, Anchorkin and other sentient static forms to operate linguistic formats. Himbear Himroy Himamani himself had ratified a concept, at 6789 Concord, which detailed an ongoing cosmogenic plane. Though fraught with dovetail atavisms, it pulsed to moderated sensibility, hinting at hidden substratum cores where humans still existed, in some Cyberian or hyperbaric stasis, engineering noose haphazardly by a dance of Dionysian informatics. In the higher news fields, Himroy postulates these humans might actually be real, though of course in negative news such could never be possible post-Cool Button. Assuming high N, What were these beings doing? How could they exist at all, and what kinds of bodies might they have? Within the fifth shape's shadow full-born proceeds whispered of true mass, though Himroy and the rest would laugh at such foolishness. Himroy has recounted, in a seventh shape footnote, only visible in X-35 paths of early editions of Himsway, a particular ritual developed by Neverborn splinter sects, which aimed to answer these questions. Siphoning huge sap repositories from now lost forest groves, the NBS managed to leverage enough ETLE to actually summon a human into news. Their mind logs reported incredible numeric aurora and then a phenomenal cough that was beyond all known timber. Then the revenant donned a hat made of mysterious firmament other than gauze or calcite or shale, then spoke 19 words before congealing to a strangely symmetrical stack of various canned seafoods. The words this apocryphal human spoke, before departing, while implicitly dubious and successfully refuted by a great variance of tracks in RR, nonetheless echoes still in the vortex monologues of both Neverborn and Full, fear the limit of us, for therein lies the death of art, and therein lies the way we perish. These 19 words became known as the starkest prophecy, and they have haunted low news shadows and bubbled through alts in ways even the articulator cannot but guess at. But what became of the errant NB sect and the strange integrity able to leverage ETLE to do such unspeakable things? No one knows. Dawn was a penumbra. It illuminated, over lithocharge iotas, the branching tree lashed round by chain. News still cascaded then over firmaments of molecular mass, gathering ephemera, car fenders, bounteous office ferns and stuffed echidnas left in its wake. Like glacial fluvia, matter pre-touched caressing electron fingers, but lexical essences were edging up to Q-dissolve. Or end assertions. Articulator wasn't fully booted yet, so even the fidgety anchorkin were not all so ascribed. Lou pulsed into articulator and leaned heavily against a rail, fixing the branching tree with a tired gaze. Lou was real, Neverborn. They were of the eighth, dipped, and skilled so far beyond these proceeds that their fantasies most far indulgent dream of power paled against the lowest of Lou's capabilities. Lou's outward skill was also sublimated, however, behind a logic bank of her own subscription, sequestered in the control ID's consensus manifestation of approximate responses. She rarely displayed such gravitas that anyone would know. Not evangelical by any means, but absolutely a neo-physicalist, as were many Neverborn, she preferred the labors of general upkeep, and her tools were antique, pre-nano, if so allowed by safety tracts. All's well, asked Lou's prehensile Cartesian clone. Lou's outward skill. Sublimated. Mine eyes. Me. My outward. There. Thine, thy eyes. Lou. Cracks had formed in the tree's calcite surface. The chain had loosened and Lou's caress became a palpating, squeezing sap from between her fingers, which pried between sarcoma and tendrils, fine threads and cutting wires elastically taut in the stretch between immaterial and material. At least this was as the Cartesian clone would see it. Indeed, CC was screaming now, belching and crying with unfettered dying awakenings in a sea of loosened plastics. Hey! She bellowed to articulator as rainbows shredded its mantle, it wasn't supposed to leave this realm without. No. The wave moved slowly outward from the branching tree, giving one the impression they could simply jog a bit and escape it. Lou moved to do just that, and found she was frozen. Seized with terror, she watched the cascade as the total entropy contained in her tree spilled out, pushing her realm to heat death lazily as it consumed all she'd ever known. Dawn was a penumbra. It illuminated, over lithocharge iotas, the branching tree lashed round by chain. News still cascaded then over firmaments of molecular mass, gathering ephemera, car fenders, bounteous office ferns and stuffed echidnas left in its wake. Like glacial fluvia, matter pre-touched caressing electron fingers, but lexical essences were edging up to Q dissolve. Or N assertions. Articulator wasn't fully booted yet, so even the fidgety anchorkin were not all so ascribed. Of trees, there are many. Many branches twisting into the sky. Take to you those of your desire. Except for these. Excerpt found etched within the eyelid of a Nous +1 proto-anchorkin circa 1. 67 times 10 1 superscript 2 seconds pre-cool button. Dawn was a penumbra. It illuminated, over lithocharge iotas, the branching tree lashed round by chain. News still cascaded then over firmaments of molecular mass, gathering ephemera, car fenders, bounteous office ferns and stuffed echidnas left in its wake. Like glacial fluvia, matter pre-touched caressing electron fingers, but lexical essences were edging up to Q dissolve. Or N assertions. Articulator wasn't fully booted yet, so even the fidgety anchorkin were not all so ascribed. At max. Downward in the tree's deeper successive being lurked the quiescent stimulus womb, charging Nous with synthetic immanence that would otherwise be lost. The burgeoning complexity of the tree's twisting apparatus implied a release from the dominion of synthanatos and a return to the originate vector of nearly human awe. The tree held bits predating the rise of the wound, predating dawn. To this clarion call, many noetic alganimals would gather. Ibexes, with